Alex Crowley is a former advisor to Boris Johnson. Indeed, Alex, you were awarded an OBE in his resignation honours. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Not a peerage, because he was handing those out like sweeties.
No, I missed out on that.
Oh, well, you probably weren't junior enough, because we understand someone who was one of his little advisors and bag carriers for a few months got a peerage.
That is a matter for him. I can't comment on that.
I've got to ask that. Right, Alex, look, what do you make of this report? I mean, just to summarise, they have found him guilty of contempt of Parliament, guilty of lying, not just to Parliament in all those instances where he said, oh, not me, Gov, didn't know anything about a party. Oh, well, I wasn't there. Oh, no, it was an event, but it wasn't a party. All the rules were followed. They have found that he lied again and again and again. And then when he gave evidence to the committee, he lied again to them. He held them in contempt, his words outside Parliament. Since punishment, not just that a 90-day suspension, but also as a former Prime Minister, not just a former MP, a former Prime Minister, he should have no Commons pass, not be able to enter the parliamentary estate when he so chooses, or queuing up just like, you or me or any other member of the public. What do you make of that report summary?
Right, so having just seen the detail of it now, I have to say that there is an air of vindictiveness about the strength of those findings. We all knew, of course, that the report was going to be bad for him. That's why he preemptively resigned. We all knew that he was on a sticky wicket to begin with. This whole problem started, of course, if you recall, because his first response to the stories about alleged parties and what have you was to say, oh, no, nothing happened. It's a non-story. And, of course, once he stuck to that position, he eventually made his own job as Prime Minister untenable. Of course, he's already suffered the punishment for that. He wanted to be Prime Minister his whole life. He finally got there. He won a big majority. And then a scandal like this forces him to resign. So he's paid a massive personal price for this. Now, a lot of people will say, quite rightly so too, those who set the rules shouldn't be breaking them, and I think there is some truth to that.
Yeah, I think the people who weren't allowed to see their parents as they lay dying, or never met their grandchildren for the first 6 months of their lives, and couldn't go to school, and lost their businesses, they probably paid a slightly bigger price than Boris Johnson did with his multi-million-pound earnings since leaving office.
Of course, the world's smallest violin and all that, yeah. Right? I totally accept that. But what we have here is what looks like a politically driven process rather than a so-called neutral, even judicial process to try and get at the truth. It's presented as this kind of very formal, very calm, neutral process. But it's a problem of the system. When you have politicians judging other politicians for their conduct, you cannot remove politics from it. The chair of this committee is someone who used to be a Labour deputy prime minister who was briefly the leader of the Labour Party. Yeah. He does have something of a point.
Except it's a majority. There's 7 members and 4 of them are Conservatives. And even the one he's criticising, Bernard Jenkins, for hypocrisy, attending a party when we were in Tier 2 at the time in December 2020, is not even like an anti-Brexit establishment thing. Bernard Jenkins was on the board of the Vote Leave campaign.
But as we all know in politics, your worst enemies are sat behind you, not across the aisle.
Stay with us, Alex. Please stay with us. I want to come back to Peter Cardwell. Let's just to summarise, people who are just tuning in, 9:17. We've finally got, after a year and more investigations, we finally got that Partygate report from the Privileges Committee. This is a committee of MPs, 4 Tories, 2 Labour, 1 SNP, led by Harriet Harman, the former, as Alex Crowley was just pointing out, Deputy Prime Minister Harriet Harman. They have finally published that report. We were hoping it would be out on Monday. Various different things caused it to be delayed. Their report is as damning as it can be. The investigation wasn't into whether there were parties. It was whether or not during lockdown there were parties. And then the Prime Minister subsequently lied to Parliament. They have ruled that the Prime Minister deliberately misled the Commons, committing a serious contempt. Peter Cardwell, I mean, this report, is there an air of vindictiveness about it, a political aspect to this, as Alex Crowley says?
That is what Boris Johnson contends, certainly. Now, the committee has set out all its evidence. I'm just going through every bit of it now, 30,000 words in this report, but it is very, very damning, as you say. Boris Johnson has hit back immediately, referencing Bernard Jenkins there. You talked about the controversy there. Bernard Jenkins is, I should say, a well-known nudist, because Boris Johnson says the committee's... No, this is relevant. The committee's desperation to tie him to illicit events that their argument is, as Boris Johnson puts it, so threadbare that it belongs in one of Bernard Jenkins' nudist colonies. So we know that Boris Johnson's a master of words, but
there's an insight we didn't really need, but there we are. Yes, so, I mean, Boris Johnson's going to do this line by line rebuttal.
Yes.
He's definitely coming out fighting. We know that he came out
already,
fighting on Friday, and even more in the late night submission from his lawyers. I think on Tuesday night, which delayed the report. No, Monday night, delayed
3 minutes to midnight.
We were hoping it was coming in on Wednesday morning. Delayed. I mean, this is as damning as they can be in terms of their ruling, but also as damning as they could be in terms of the punishment.
Yes.
Talk us through that.
So the 90-day suspension that was mooted by the Privileges Committee won't happen because Boris Johnson isn't an MP anymore, but that's about as bad as it gets for an MP. It's a 90-day suspension from Parliament that could have hypothetically led, if a series of events had happened, to a by-election in his constituency. Some people will argue that Boris Johnson got out, sort of jumped before he was pushed kind of thing. We will never know whether that's the case or not, but certainly in terms of not allowing him a pass to be back in the parliamentary estate. I mean, he's the former Prime Minister.
Is that where you get into the sort of petty vindictiveness? That he lost his job as Prime Minister, I believe quite rightly so. He's decided to resign as an MP. Let's face it, he would have faced a recall. He almost certainly wouldn't have got re-elected. That's why he's resigned. His political career, I do believe, to be completely over. I was at an event last night. Lots of people seem to think, no, never say never. I'm calling it. I'm saying never. And so things like a 90-day suspension, things like a no comments pass, is just like needlessly putting the knife in, or are they trying to convey their contempt for his contempt?
It kind of depends on your perspective. Certainly Boris Johnson would say that it's a vindictive report, that it's a kangaroo court. It's something that has no legitimacy. But the fact is that this was a 14-month investigation. They took a lot of oral evidence from Boris Johnson.
OK.